This is a wet circuit that we use for nasal high flow and sometimes for CPAP. Within this bag, we've got short tubing that goes from the ventilator to the humidifier. We've got long tubing which goes from the humidifier to the patient. This has got a heater wire inside it so it stops rain out in the tube. The other thing we've got is a pressure line and an exhalation port. We only use the pressure line and the exhalation port if we're using CPAP. We don't need to use that. We take that out of the circuit if we're going to use nasal high flow, but we'll have a look at that when we look at the V60. You need extra things to complete this circuit. You need a Fisher-Paykel chamber, which are kept separately. You need a filter and you need a bag of sterile water, which is always the red water. If you're using CPAP, you would use a face mask, a non-invasive ventilation face mask. If you're using nasal high flow, you would use a specialist nasal cannula. So I'm going to show you how to set up the V60 as using it as a nasal high flow or a CPAP with a wet circuit. So we'll set up the wet circuit first using a Fisher-Paykel humidifier, which is called an F&P 850. So we need a chamber with an entrainer, which we put a bag of sterile water. So to put that in, you push the front of the humidifier down and slide it in. Use a bag of sterile water. Push that in, hang it up on the hook, and that feeds the ventilator, feeds the chamber. So you get sterile water filling this chamber. We need a separate filter. The filter goes onto the ventilator. Then we need to get the gas from the ventilator into the humidifier. So we use the short tubing on the filter into one side of the chamber. It doesn't matter which side of the chamber you use, either's fine. So if we look at the Fisher-Paykel humidifier, you can see that we've got our tubing which is coming via a filter from the ventilator into the chamber, into which we've got sterile water running, which runs into here. So this is the patient end of the circuit. The wide bore tubing goes towards the patient. It's got a really unusual end on it. You can see at the end it's got a clover leaf attachment, and that's where a heater wire goes. And there's another wire that goes in there, which is the blue wire, which tells the machine how hot it is at the humidifier end. At the other end of the tubing, which is directly close to your patient, you would put the other end of the blue wire, which tells the humidifier how hot it is at the patient end. So if I just show you, we have the yellow wire here, which has the clover leaf attached. That goes in to the clover leaf end. And then the start of the blue wire has got a triangular attachment, which slots in this end. Give that a good shove to get it in. Then this end of the circuit fits on the humidifier. On the other end of the circuit, we have another port. So the other end of the blue wire will go in there, and that's the temperature sensor at the patient end. If I'm going to use this wet circuit for nasal high flow, all I have to do is attach my specialist nasal cannula onto the end and attach that to my patient. If I wanted to use this wet circuit for CPAP, then I would take out my nasal high flow cannula. I would need an exhalation port, which comes in the wet circuit bag. You can see there's a hole there for the patient to breathe out. I would need to attach my pressure line. Onto the ventilator. I would need a filter, and then attach my CPAP mask, and I'm away to go. If I wanted to change that back to nasal high flow, all I would have to do is take that whole piece out, disconnect my pressure line, and put my nasal cannula back in. Once you've set up your wet circuit, you need to turn your humidifier on. So if you press the bottom right hand button, So here you can see you've got an ET tube setting, and here you've got a face mask setting. If you're using it in nasal high flow, it needs to be on the ET tube setting. If you're using it for CPAP, it needs to be in the face mask setting. The ET tube setting is hotter than the face mask setting. So if you try to do CPAP with it on ET tube, your patient won't be able to tolerate the higher temperature. This is your alarm silence button. If there's a problem, then there's lights that flash up, whether it's at the patient end or the machine end, and allows you to fix the problem. It's very important that you've always got water in this chamber, because this plate gets very, very hot, heats up the water, so you've got water vapour that the cold air, oxygen air mix from the ventilator picks up and is carried to the patient via the heated wire. If there's no water in there, that burns. So you need to make sure you've always got a full water bag attached to the Fisher Paykel. It does take a little bit of time to warm up, but not too long.